So absorption of food within the small intestine, all the major food groups are going to be absorbed: carbohydrates, proteins, nucleic acids, all of the different fats. And we'll see that fat, depending on the size, if you have small chain triglycerides, which are lower than 14 or 15 carbons, those can be absorbed into the portal vein. But if they're larger, you actually have to package those triglycerides back, or package the fatty acids back into triglycerides in the form of chylomicrons. And those chylomicrons travel through the lymphatic system and are absorbed back into the venous blood at the thoracic duct. So it takes a while, maybe a couple of hours after you eat a fat meal, for the fat to start appearing in your bloodstream in the form of chylomicrons. All right, so absorption of water. So a normal person typically takes maybe 1 liter to 1.5 liters of fluid and food in every day. And by the time the ingested material enters the large intestine, approximately 80% of the fluid has been absorbed. And in actuality, they say the main job of the large intestine is to absorb remaining water, but in reality, the small intestine absorbs by far the most water. One, because it's got 20 feet with which to do that, and there's relatively little water remaining within the large intestine by the time it gets there. But it tries to reduce that amount so that you maintain the movability of the feces and allow it to move, but retain as much water as possible. And the same mechanisms that we saw in the kidney, where the cells pump sodium into the interstitium, helps to facilitate that process. All right, so here you see in the small intestine, you have the various different monosaccharides like fructose being absorbed by either active transport or facilitated diffusion. Amino acids are absorbed by active transport, short chain fatty acids by diffusion. Long chain fatty acids have to be digested into fatty acids and monoglycerides that then get absorbed and then repackaged into chylomicrons and excreted into the interstitium so that they're taken up by the lymphatic system in the lacteals and then make their way through the lymph system back to the venous circulation. All right, so you can see here the microvilli. So in the intestinal lumen, you have those materials that are being absorbed either by active transport or diffusion, and they then make their way into the portal system that then goes to the liver. So most of the water, as I said, is absorbed by the small intestine, and it's absorbed by osmosis. The vitamins, particularly the fat-soluble vitamins, which include A, D, E, and K, so to maximally absorb those vitamins, you should have fat in your diet. That facilitates the entry of those into the cell. Water-soluble vitamins like B and C are absorbed by diffusion. And as I said before, B12, you need intrinsic factor to be able to absorb that in distal portions of the GI tract. And if the stomach doesn't produce it, you can become B12 deficient, which involves, as I said, potentially getting anemia or getting dementia. It's one of the few causes of reversible dementia. By just giving the individual a shot of B12, they slowly are able to regain their faculties and be able to not have dementia anymore. All right, so the large intestine functions as a storage repository for feces. You also have microbial fermentation going on. So the microbes are present for a large formation of the gases that are found, which include methane as well as others. And recovery of water and electrolytes also occurs in the large intestine. So you have the digestive tube between the terminal ileum and the anus. It's where most of the gastrointestinal cancers occur, most likely because you have all those bacteria and other potential substances that are being stored there and potentially irritating the cells within the stomach. Certain substances that are more likely to cause cancer than others include alcohol, having nitrites or nitrates in your food, which is common within like sandwich meats or bacon or other types of cured meat. You have the cecum, which is sort of like the human doesn't have the cecum, it has more of the vermiform appendix. Vermiform means worm-like, and as I said before, they think that it serves as a repository of bacteria. If you ever have your colon flushed of bacteria by a diarrheal disease like cholera or something, it allows those good bacteria to re-inhabit the intestine. It's also a source of many different immune cells. So it plays a role in the immune system, and we'll see probably 70% of your immune system is actually going to be found in your GI tract. And a good reason for that is because of the large number of bacteria that are found within the GI tract. All right, so you can see the large intestine includes the ascending colon, transverse colon, descending colon, the sigmoid colon, and then the rectum. And then distal to the rectum is the anus, so you have the internal and the external anal sphincter. Most of the tumors within the colon either occur within the sigmoid or this region, which is the descending colon. And you can actually do a procedure known as a sigmoidoscopy, where you insert a tube and just look at the sigmoid colon, as opposed to doing a full colonoscopy, which if they're complete, go all the way to the ileocecal valve. And here you see the appendix down there, so that contains the immune cells as well as the potential bacteria that can repopulate the colon. And individuals who get appendicitis, initially they have pain in their umbilical region, which then goes down to the right lower quadrant. Or no, it's the, let's see, this would be, yeah, right lower quadrant. All right, so large intestine functions as complete absorption, manufacture of vitamins, in particular vitamin K, formation of feces, and expulsion of feces from the body. So you have mechanical moving. There is what's called mass movement of feces from one part of the large intestine to the other. So these are literally strong peristaltic waves that drive the colonic contents into the rectum, and it's initiated by food in the stomach, or like when you have your morning coffee, that often initiates the mass movements. Caffeine has some effect on the enteric nervous system, and it facilitates that, so it oftentimes precipitates people going to the bathroom and having a bowel movement. So human feces contains a large proportion of bacteria, and in humans, typically, we are outnumbered by the bacteria both on us and in us. That's a comforting thought, thinking about coronavirus, but anyway. Bacteria and viruses are all around us, unfortunately. And this just is a blurry slide showing what happens when the bacteria in the colon get various foodstuffs. They can digest fats and produce things like hydrogen gas, also butyrate, methane, sulfate reducers, so hydrogen sulfide makes your farts smell particularly noxious. So anything that contains sulfur may end up making its way to the colon and causing you to produce hydrogen sulfide, which I'm sure your neighbors won't be happy about. So digestion within the large intestine, up to 40% of fecal mass is bacteria. It is brown because of the bilirubin, and you have bacteria that produce certain vitamins like B vitamins, and as I already mentioned, the vitamin K. And defecation is just the movement and expulsion of the feces that has been stored, and it involves a process very similar. When the colon or rectum is stretched, that initiates the relaxation of the internal sphincter, so that the only thing holding the feces in is going to be the external sphincter. But at least it gives you time to make your way to the bathroom before you get an explosion occurring. And fiber, I've talked about fiber a little bit before, but you have two types of fiber. The soluble fiber is soluble in water, so good examples of that include like oat bran. Insoluble fiber, typically cellulose, your cells are not able to break down that material, so it makes its way through your GI tract in an unaltered form. If anybody's ever eaten corn and not chewed it appropriately, you can sometimes see whole kernels popping up within your feces, unaltered. So that's just an example of how the cellulose doesn't get broken down. The soluble fiber can actually help lower your cholesterol level because it keeps the cholesterol trapped within the feces and allows it to be expelled from the body. And in fact, the body cannot metabolize the cholesterol or break it down for energy production. It can only transform cholesterol into hormones like testosterone, cortisol, or others, or it has to get rid of it, and the only way to typically get rid of it is in the feces. So allowing it, giving patients different agents that they swallow that keeps the cholesterol within their GI tract is one methodology of lowering a patient's cholesterol. Telling them to eat more soluble fiber, like in the form of Cheerios, is another way that can happen. And these are just some examples of the fiber. So insoluble includes barley, couscous, brown rice, bulgur. Soluble fiber, classic ones, oat bran, oatmeal, nuts, seeds, beans, dried peas, strawberries, all of those. All right, so I think that's a good place to stop. So looking at the colon, colorectal cancer, we already talked about that a little bit, and the lifetime risk is about 6%. So I think I'll stop the lecture here, and on Monday I'll continue on this. On Friday, I'm going to post a test so that you can then do it over the weekend. And as I said, it's probably going to contain 10 or 11 essay questions as opposed to multiple choice. So this is coronavirus lecture number 1.